And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPCast. Today is me, Josh. Or actually, no. It's me and Erica. But I thought in the honor of the Al Smith dinner where, you exchange jokes, we thought we would bring in Josh's ghostwriter. So anytime joke writer, and anytime Josh sounds smart or funny, it's actually this guy writing it. So Tinfoil Tom.
Tinfoil Tom. The conspiracies are true.
I've got to say, when Erica's not on the show, you have like superstars come on. And Josh can't make it, and you have me. And I on behalf of Josh, I'm a little bit offended.
But it is tough. The joke writers don't get enough play. Like, they don't get enough credit. And we thought today it would be only appropriate. People love Josh so much. They love when he goes on his rants. But little do they know, they're actually pre-written monologues by you. So I'd like to give you a lot of credit today. Today we're
and who doesn't want to put this face out front?
That's right.
Well, hey, first off, welcome to everyone in the chat. Sorry we're a few minutes late. I see some people on fall break. Someone's on a cruise ship in Naples, Italy. When can we record this podcast from a cruise in Naples, Italy? Sounds pretty chill to me. But thank you guys for joining live in the chat. If you could, just while you're here, leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. Helps us out a ton. But I thought today, as you notice in my dress, I dressed up a little bit. No, I don't own a white tie, but I thought in the spirit of the Al Smith dinner, maybe I'd dress up a little bit. We could have a few laughs. We could enjoy what happened last night. For those unfamiliar, it's a really traditional Catholic dinner that proceeds go to charity. It's supposed to be a unifying event for the country in which every presidential candidate attends. They roast each other a little bit. They have all in good fun. And someone ruined the fun this year and decided that maybe they were scared some Knights of Columbus might be there, because I know they're a little scary. Sometimes they bring out the feather hats and the swords, but Kamala Harris didn't go. And many are pointing out that it seems like a missed layup in an election that will most likely be decided by Catholics in swing state places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, where you do have a high concentration of Catholics. She did send something instead, and I almost don't know where to begin with this. Trump stuff was very funny. Kamala's, I don't know if we could say the same about the pre-record, or if I don't know if we get flagged for violence or something like that for putting this out there, because it was that bad.
It was the death of comedy.
Yeah.
In real time. I don't know. I think we just have to play it. It's
do we go Kamala up top?
Oh.
And of course, the death of comedy is connected with Saturday Night Live.
True.
Since now, there was.
Who did she drag out to interrupt her little
Molly Shannon, if I recall correctly,
yep,
who used to play with Will Ferrell, this character that was a different. See, it's been so long since she was even relevant. Who? She used to play a Catholic schoolgirl, and she was like superstar. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if she's personally Catholic. I don't think anybody ever saw it as Catholic identity. So to bring her on, apparently that is the most Catholic person that Kamala knows.
Got to play it. I think Pogo.
Yeah, I say okay. So let's torture the chat a little bit before we get into a little bit of the laughs. Look, I got to do it. It's part of the job.
No drinking before noon.
No drinking before noon. I just got coffee, but here we go. I'm gonna play a little bit of it. It's kind of long and it's hard to watch, so we'll play a little bit.
And distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Elliott. Mary Catherine Elliott. It's so nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mary Catherine. Right now I'm trying to record my speech for tonight's dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know. I just want to say that I'm Catholic, and tonight is one of the biggest dinners next to the Last Supper.
It is a very important dinner, and it's an important tradition that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that. But that's gross.
So tell me something. I'm giving a speech. Do you have some thoughts about what I might say tonight?
My feelings about what you should say tonight would be best expressed in a monologue from one of my favorite made-for-TV series.
Okay, let's hear it.
Don't you see, man? We need a woman to represent us. A woman brings more heart, more compassion. And think how smart she must be to become a top contender in a field dominated by men. It's time for a woman, bro. And with this woman, we can fly.
What series was that from?
Oh, that's from House of Dragons, now streaming on HBO Max.
All right, that's all I'm going to do.
I
Quite the
Cringe
Catholic
doesn't
show
even
there.
Touch it. Cringe does not even touch this. I watched the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
give
my
us a summary
husband-
for those. Yeah.
We were standing in the kitchen this morning. I'm like, okay, I gotta watch it because we're gonna talk about it. So we hit play, and it's like 5:30 in the morning before the kids get up, and we're just both standing there, jaw dropping. I think you're right, Tom. I think that Tom McClusky. I think that the Kamala campaign was like, okay, Catholics, we have to say something to Catholics. What do we know about them? And one of them, who's like an aging millennial like me, is like, there was this character on Saturday Night Live who was a Catholic schoolgirl. That will totally reach out to the Catholics and make up for this. I mean, it was so offensive. Like the Last Supper, and then at the end of the monologue or the end of the bit, Kamala starts quoting Luke to us, the Gospel of Luke. Shout out to the apostle, by the way. It's his feast day today. So maybe she was giving a nod to that. But it's just so cringe.
She probably only knows Luke from the Peanuts cartoon. I mean, what prominent Catholic could she have gotten that wouldn't have offended everybody? Because what shocked me most about the dinner, and I might be getting ahead of ourselves, is she lost Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, that was shocking to me.
Jim Gaffigan, to me, got lost during COVID because he went totally woke and totally, like, he was swearing on Twitter and all, just for anybody who disagreed with him. He had a lot of jokes at her expense for not showing up, even after the video.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, what was that?
Yeah.
He was funny. I'll have to give it to him. As someone who basically hopped off because hopped off the Gaffigan train because I thought the what was the thing that he always talked about? Pop-Tarts. He had a bit on Pop-Tarts that I remember I had like some family members like, oh, Jim Gaffigan. And he just was so angry for so long. I was just like, oh man. And then obviously very anti-Trump. He actually went on Rogan and kind of talked a lot about that. And Rogan was kind of like, yeah, it's crazy like what Trump does to people. And he kind of, I don't know, opened his mind maybe.
He has Trump derangement syndrome or had it to a certain extent. Yeah.
No question.
Like set the stage though, Pogo, like for people who don't know what we're talking about. So like last night was the Al Smith dinner in New York. Jim Gaffigan was the MC for the event.
Yeah.
And Trump shows up, but obviously Kamala didn't. That was her 2 hours before she sends over this video instead. And
someone said Hot Pockets. I meant to say Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets, that was it.
Yeah.
He was angry though.
So I have a clip from his little monologue, which I have to say funny. I didn't expect much, but
the Democrats have been telling us Trump's re-election is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed
I gotta say,
Kamala
most of the time
Harris.
I've been watching Chuck Schumer's
In
face.
other words,
right next to him.
All her dreams have come true. Really? It really makes you consider the power of prayer, right, Cardinal? Sometimes prayers take 3.5 years and a George Clooney op-ed.
I watched Chuck Schumer the whole night too. He's just sitting right there.
You saw the Trump bit on Schumer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, it wasn't Nancy.
I got it.
It was Chuck.
Here, we'll go. If you guys want to talk Chuck Schumer, I feel like we have to start here.
Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president. And I actually said, do you mind if I do that? And he said, no, you got to do what you got to do. He's a pro. He's a professional.
It's awesome.
Trump also mentioned how he gave Chuck Schumer his first check, his first political donation.
Oh, really?
Yes, he did. He dropped that line.
He used to be, I mean, before he ran for president, checks were showing up all the time of him giving to Clinton and to Schumer and to, That's why a lot of us questioned him when he jumped in 2015.
Right. Yeah, to be fair. I mean, so let me see. Maybe I'm going to show one other clip. I don't want this whole episode to just be clips, but I feel like this might have been my other favorite from the night. There's so many good ones, but and then we'll go into some thoughts.
But I don't think Kamala has given up yet. She hasn't, instead of attending tonight. She's in Michigan receiving communion from Gretchen Whitmer. Not a pretty sight.
Not a pretty sight.
Catholics, please don't be too insulted by Kamala's absence. If the Democrats, yeah, he says, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, of course, tons of funny clips. I mean, this is just Trump in his natural habitat, right? I mean, just kind of riffing, roasting. He's been doing this for so many years. I think a bigger talking point, even funnier than any of the roasts that came out, because we come to expect that. This is a dinner that people go to support charity, and it's supposed to be a unifying event for the country. Everyone kind of understands you go, and of course we have our political differences, but we can come together and laugh and be humans, and it's okay. It's not, I believe that's hard for some people to swallow when you call the other guy America's Hitler and threat to democracy, this and that, but it really is supposed to be a unifying event. Everyone is gone. The last person to not go is Walter Mondale, and he lost 49 out of 50 states, as Timothy Dolan brought up. But one thing I wanted to talk about here, amidst all the funny clips, was I believe this was either during the event or right after the event, we get a press release from the Harris campaign. And I think this is kind of characteristic of the campaign as a whole. So straight from their rapid response director, Amar Musa, quote, Donald Trump has struggled to read scripted notes by his handlers, repeatedly complaining that he couldn't use a teleprompter. He stumbled over his words and lashed out when the crowd wouldn't laugh with him. The rare moments he was off script, he went on long, incomprehensible rambles, reminding Americans how unstable he's become. And of course, he made it all about himself. He may refuse to release his medical records, but every day he makes it clear to the American people that he is not up to the job.
Oh my gosh.
Desperate.
Desperate times and desperate measures.
This seems to be the new.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
If I'm filling in for Josh, I want to speak over you.
That's right. Thanks. I feel right at home.
But this seems to be the new message from the campaign is like trying to, Trump is old, Trump is rambling and everything. If you've ever seen, the first time I saw Trump speak was 2015 at FRC's Value Voter Summit. And guess what? He was rambling. And he had funny bits in there. He was a lot funnier than you'd expect. So this just shows how desperate they are, that they're trying to say like he's the new Joe Biden when Joe Biden isn't even off the stage yet.
That's why it doesn't mystify me so much. You just have to laugh at it at this point, that the party that for 3.5 years were hiding this guy in the basement who's basically a walking corpse and saying he was the president and he's running and he's full of vigor and he's running rings around his staff. That party is now their number one tactic, it seems, against their opponent, Donald Trump, is that he's a walking corpse. It's just so upside down. It's
and the guy's doing a campaign schedule that, and I'm like 25 years younger than him, that I would not be able to handle.
Right. Exhausting. Speaking of exhausted.
Yeah.
I think you guys are pointing out the obvious. I've heard those things all said before. Mm-hmm. I think the point that maybe gets at me the most is how fake and projected this Harris campaign is. Like, this is, maybe people don't understand the Al Smith dinner enough. If you go back, we've covered it on the show. There's really funny bits from the Obama years, from the Bush years, and it's supposed to be this kind of fun event. It's not supposed to be a campaign rally in which you release a press release attacking the person right after. And the Trump campaign didn't. If anything, they criticized Kamala Harris for not going to a charity event for Catholics that is supposed to be for fun. And so even just the entire approach Kamala Harris took to this event, to me, just feels like it's such a missed layup. She could have had any comedian she wanted to in Hollywood write her jokes. She could have showed up. She could have read them. She could have laughed a little bit. She could have acted like a normal human being during a roast, had a good time, raised some money for charity, and maybe won goodwill with Catholic voters. But of course, the joy campaign from Kamala Harris is skipping this event, sending a bizarre skit that she read off of a teleprompter for, clearly didn't put any effort into it. And even Jim Gaffigan brought this up. She didn't have any time because she did all these, traditional campaign stops like The View, Colbert, and Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
It's not like she's so consumed with more important things. I just think this is the latest in a long list of really obvious snubs to Catholics that the Harris campaign has done. Of course, the first of them being going after David Daleiden for the pro-life activism in California that he's still dealing with lawsuits from, followed up with saying that being a part of the Knights of Columbus is disqualifying to be on the federal bench, which is
Right.
an insane religious test we've seen for so many years. And I actually do think it's a little point of pride for her to not to try to win this election without any help from Catholics in a traditional sense. I really do think she despises just about everything that actual Catholics are for. And so this to me is kind of along a long line of kind of little digs. And then this was kind of the big middle finger of like, I'm not going to go. F you. I know this is an easy opportunity. I could do it. I just don't want to. I'm going to be in Michigan doing whatever anyway.
Well, to her defense, Teddy Roosevelt would have never been president if he hadn't gone on the Call Me Daddy podcast. And William Jennings Bryan refused to. So bully for him.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I don't want to make too much of a dinner. And I love the Al Smith dinner. I always have. I'm a nerd. I like to go back and watch the speeches, like it's great. I love it. And I don't want to make too much of it though, because it is supposed to be like a moment for people to just be normal. But I think that the way that her campaign handled this event is very telling as to the direction they want to take the country and the purpose they see of politics. And obviously, like, Chuck Schumer has done very bad things. He is obviously like not a good person or leader. He stands for things that I believe are intrinsic evil and damaging to our country. But he was there and he sat there and he can take it. He can take the joshing and the ribbing. And again, like just seeing him laugh at himself and laugh at the fact that he staged a coup and like have to sit there and listen to someone say it next to him. That speaks some kind of hope for our country, and the fact that she can't and won't doesn't to me. I don't know. I'm saying this very badly.
Any normal
Friday.
person would have benefited from going to this dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
Like she would have had to bomb incredibly, and if anything, it probably would have even muted Donald Trump's criticism of her even more. Let alone the digs from Jim Gaffigan, who's a diehard Democrat. She just obviously just hurt herself, and it's a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, it could be
which
a
I
middle
guess is the
finger.
definition.
Could be a deliberate middle finger, Pogo. I hear that, but I think it also could just be a complete out of touch. She's just off the rails. She just has no sense of what's going on in this country and doesn't really care.
I think it's a middle finger, and I'd like to actually throw maybe not a middle finger, but I'd like to put the National Communist Reporter on blast here.
This was great.
So I saw this and out loud went, seriously, what the heck are we saying here? Catholic newspaper editorial: Cardinal Dolan's Al Smith dinner disappointment is misdirected. If you want to dig into this, they're talking about how Timothy Dolan called Trump a gentleman at one point and how evil and wrong that is. And then the main criticism, of course, is cringy as all of this may be, the reality is much worse. The record on Trump's part is extensive, but besmirched by actions such as inciting a insurrection, paying off a porn star for his silence, and placing children in cages at the border and separating them from their parents. There's lots more, of course. It's all been out there for the public to view, but it seems we've become so numb to his destruction of norms that behavior that would have disqualified someone for running for dog catcher in a previous era is now tolerated at the level of presidency. The mistake, and the Cardinal is hardly the first or last to make it, is to judge the moment as if it was somehow still attached to a degree of normalcy and what we've always known as presidential politics. Basically saying, I think it eventually gets to, the sin here is that Kamala Harris had the good sense to reply, no, thank you, I'm previously engaged. The real scandal is that the good Catholic cardinal of the great city of New York would not have the courage to say this year that the current Republican candidate is a walking example of so much that the Catholic Church finds repugnant in today's politics, and he would suspend the normal invitations.
Unbelievable.
Love the norms talk, right? Because what's the norm here? The norm is, this is a fun event that unifies everyone to bring people together. Kamala Harris clearly broke the norm, right? But we have to get a goalpost move. And the real problem here is that Trump was invited in the first place because, of course, he's so morally repugnant. And, of course, I like to bring up the kids in cages line. I think straight from the DHS, the numbers at over 300,000 kids we've lost in the country from illegal immigration over the past 3.5 years. And people get real silent when you talk about that because maybe it was easier to use as a sledgehammer was 325, which of course is horrible. No one would want that. I'm sure Trump himself wouldn't even want that. But now that we're at 300,000, it's almost too big to even fathom the evil of the policies of this previous administration. No, NCR. The real problem is that Kamala Harris did not come to this. That's the norm. We're not destroying norm. Like, this makes me so mad. It's almost like we want politicians to speak up. We want our cardinals to speak up. Don't let the churchmen speak about politics unless it's in favor of Democrat policies.
Exactly.
Right?
Nailed it.
Oh, man, that one got me going this morning.
Oh, man, that was some populist Tom, but it was
Tom.
He was angry populist Tom, man.
McClusky, what were you saying?
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt that rant, so
it's all right. I wrote it, so
yeah. Erica wrote that one. She's my ghostwriter.
She's everybody's ghostwriter.
It's true. So the next one we have is we didn't get to do this on Wednesday, but I was definitely following it very closely. It was the Kamala Harris Bret Bair interview. As Politico put it, Kamala Harris went bear hunting. Bret Bair, German Catholic himself. Got a lot more Catholics in news these days. Very prominent. So we have some clips from it. Before we get into the clips, I was watching it, of course, live, but I had a feeling that the left didn't think it went very well. And the reason I got this feeling was I found a couple prominent reactions immediately after the interview. Not, oh, she killed it, she did great. It was from David Plouffe. Kamala Harris, in quotes, strong. Handled an ambush Fox interview, light years better than the hash Donald Trump, in parentheses, unstable, made of the Fox pep rally disguised as a town hall. Yep, he was shockingly rude from Joe Scarborough. And from Justin Bergona, former Fox producer, just sent this reaction. Bair showed, again, he's not a straight news anchor. He's a hack who's no different than Hannity or Waters. He bowed to the pressure from his MAGA fans because he doesn't care as long as they don't change the channel. None of this really incited a ton of confidence to me, and it became obvious when I watched the interview. What did you guys think about that interview with Bret Bair?
I thought Bret Bair did extremely well. I wasn't expecting a lot because a lot of people see Fox News as some sort of like conservative bastion. Having worked in the conservative movement, especially the social conservative movement, for a long time, I do not see it that way. Bret Bair is except I think he really hit it out of the park. He hit it out of the park by acting like a reporter. I mean, our expectations now are so low that him just asking regular questions is hitting it out of the park. She did horribly, and then I read all the news emails in the morning from Politico and Punchbowl and everything like that. They're all talking about how well she did, and it was like in another world. It's almost as if they were lying. Yeah. Because over and over again, they were saying how great she was doing when it was obvious she didn't. And my problem is that a lot of people still get their news from these liberal sources. So they're not going to know just how they are covering up for her once again. The CBS, most people get their news from nightly news and things like that, who are just going to say like, she did a tough interview. Oh, go Kamala. So,
did you hear the word that went out that was in all the articles?
No, what was the word this time?
It was testy.
Testy. She was testy.
She was testy.
She was testy. In fact, if you watched the interview, she grew increasingly testy as the night wore on. It was supposed to be originally 30 minutes. We were promised 30 minutes, sit down. And about minute 21, you start to notice, she's very agitated at one point. She kind of like moving her shoulders and doing a little jig. And her eyes start to go off camera. And then you see Bret's eyes start to go off camera. And you realize at the end, Bret's like, okay, I got to do a hard stop. This is like at minute 20. I think they made it to 24 minutes. And you can tell, he's like, people are waving at me. People are waving at me. And afterwards, Bret's reflecting back and he's like, her staff, I had 4 people in the background waving at me to cut it off at 24 minutes. That's not what you do if your candidate is performing well and being
Yeah.
Right.
testy. But yeah, it's ridiculous that Bret Bair would be attacked for ambushing her when he's just asking normal questions. I don't know if you have any clips, but
I do. I
Yeah,
have
you
my
wanna do a
personal
couple?
favorite.
oh, let's see. What's your personal favorite, Pogo?
Frankly, exhausted of Brett.
More than
People are
70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But you're
people
the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
Oh my gosh.
I actually don't know what you're saying.
I actually don't know what you're talking about. Because
Good one.
it's just like a guy like on whose wife is like complaining about how he's been, and his wife's like going on, and she's like, you know exactly what I'm saying, and the poor like husband is just like, I don't know what you're saying. Like that's just Brett at this point. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But she spent the whole interview just like trying to filibuster and to sidestep. And instead of answering questions that he would ask of her about her policies and her plans, constantly just pivoting to Donald Trump. And he even said at the end of the interview, as they're closing it out rapidly because the aides are apparently off camera having heart attacks at how badly she's doing, he said, we brought you on to tell us about yourself, and you've really only told us about Donald Trump. It was just attacks on Donald Trump the whole time.
It reminds me, I think it was the 1980 election with Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter. And after the election and Ronald Reagan won, there was this New York liberal woman who was just like, she was a reporter or something. And she wrote that she can't believe that he won because nobody she knew voted for him. And I think that's the world that Kamala Harris lives in, is that she honestly believes everybody thinks the way she does because she just surrounds herself.
Yeah.
I mean, every time she fires new staff, she finds newer staff that just are yes people and agree with everything and actually believe like that people like you and I are evil. Men can be women, men can get pregnant, and all this other garbage. And they do not understand it when they're faced with reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, my read on it is, and of course you've seen all the stuff about staff turnover and everything. Clearly she's never worked a private sector job ever. Everything she's done has been in government.
She worked at McDonald's. What are you talking about?
Okay. Sure.
Whatever.
And she also owns a Glock. So she's never worked in the private sector. Every job she's had, she's basically pulled the levers of power to put herself there, and the Democratic machine of California kept elevating her up the ranks, right? She goes from working in the district attorney's office, becoming the district attorney, to becoming the attorney general, to becoming a senator, to now being the vice president because she's a black woman, explicitly said by Biden. And now she's here. And I think when you rise that way with machine politics, of course, not having the attorney record of someone that really even belongs there is funny. I even heard that, was it Mayorkas? No, it wasn't Mayorkas. It was, who's the Becerra? Javier Becerra. I believe he practiced law for a year before he became the attorney general of California. Someone can check me on that, but a year. We're talking about the top attorney in California, practiced law for a year before being there. So if you do things like that, you're put in positions where you don't actually have the confidence in your own record. So you have to overcompensate by being really mean and nasty to people behind the scenes to continue to like have them view you in this position of fear and authority. And I really think that's just how she's run the ship up until now. All the reports I've seen behind the scenes have suggested something like this. And so when you get in the interview room, and it's crazy that a Democrat can even do this because we've seen the complete opposite from J.D. Vance and Trump of just going anywhere, talking to anyone. I mean, I think Trump in 2016, he was on MSNBC like 50 times, I'm pretty sure, running for president. He's never hidden from anyone. And so you get the first interview where she had to sit down and was asked pretty basic questions about changing her record and some follow-up questions and maybe getting talked over a little bit, which guess what? You're going to be the president of the United States. You got to get used to that. You can't play the I'm a woman card. Can't believe a man would talk over me, especially if you don't know what a woman is. But she got a question about Biden's mental acuity for the first time. We're 19 days out, 20 days out. She got asked about the fact that when did you start seeing signs? When did you know? And she didn't have an answer prepared for that. And it's just crazy to me that she could run an entire presidential campaign without being asked that question, which of course is on the minds of everyone. Joked about at the Al Smith dinner. I have her response to that, and I think it's really kind of telling of the entire performance. So I'll share that one.
Unstable. You call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
after George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security.
Right. Then she goes on about Donald Trump there, but
unbelievable.
Tough.
But yeah, the point is that this is the first time anyone's confronted her with that question since the coup happened. No one's asked her. And I wish he had just come back one more time. It would not have made a difference. But if he'd come back one more time and just said, right, Joe Biden is not the candidate. Why is that? Why not? Right? And,
that would have been a good follow-up.
But I mean, he did a good job.
Did you guys see what Obama and Biden were talking about?
At the Kennedy funeral, right?
So supposedly they had a professional lip reader read what's going on here with Obama, and this will be more for the audio or for the video listeners. So we have here, this is them talking at the cathedral. And might I add, the most shocking part of this video is I believe this is during the procession, either in or out, and both of their backs are turned to the cross here. Crazy to me, especially as Biden is a Catholic. It's like, what are we doing here? Well, I guess he probably doesn't even really know where he is. But anyway, so you get this video of them talking, and you can't hear the audio. Doesn't look great. And then you get a lip reader saying, President Biden griped to former President Barack Obama that she is not as strong as me, with Obama agreeing that's true, in a stunning off-mic conversation deciphered for the Post by a professional lip reader.
Yeah.
Not great.
Ugly times. Not looking good.
Not great. But you know what I don't get, and Tom, maybe you have something on this. I don't understand these poly market betting polls. Like they're saying that Trump's at 60-some%, Kamala's now at 40-some%. It feels like a trap. Has this always been a thing? Betting on political outcomes?
Not to the extent I think that it is now, where you have websites dedicated to it, and they seem to, you can bet on who's going to be VP or anything like that. I do think, and I think Josh says this as well, that forget all the polls, be they betting polls or regular polls, you run until the day after Election Day.
Right.
And that's how you run to win. You don't start measuring the drapes beforehand. So with a lot of these, it'll be very interesting. I was at a meeting yesterday where a lot of people were saying that half the room was saying we're going to know that night, and they think Donald Trump is going to win. The other half was saying no, because it's going to be contested in a number of states. And if it's contested in a few states, you're probably going to see riots in the streets, which could even drag it out more. Pennsylvania was brought up more than once. So I don't believe anything, and polls also don't normally favor Republicans. So I don't. The only poll that matters is voting. And as Josh, I've not voted. I know Josh has already, but get out there and vote.
Yep.
If you've already voted, good for you. If you can, vote again. I mean,
spoken like a true
Tinfoil Tom.
There he is. Connecticut opens the 21st. I know we have some Connecticutians in the chat. Monday, get out there and vote.
Is that what they're called?
That's really what they.
I made that up. No, I made it
Okay,
up.
I appreciate you admitting that.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit too cose to execution or electrocution.
Yeah, I thought the collective name for Connecticut people were liberals.
Yeah. But then we moved here, so they had to come up with a new one. So I did.
Okay, well, we move on from our little hard political talk.
Whew.
And there was something that stuck out to me this week. It was from Italy. So again, as soon as we can record on a cruise ship in Naples, we will. Trust me when I say we will.
But we will accept your invitation.
Yes. So what I saw here was Italy expands its ban on surrogacy to overseas as critics say it targets same-sex couples. Of course, this is ABC News, so no surprise. Yeah. Italy on Wednesday criminalized citizens who go abroad to have children through surrogacy, while opponents slam it as medieval and discriminatory to same-sex couples. Now, I apologize, Erica, you had this as your Twilight Zone. Why did this article and law stick out to you?
It stuck out to me so much, not so much because of the way that the left covered it, but thank God there is a first world country that is doing something about this horrendous practice of child trafficking. There was a story, it was circulating on Twitter earlier this week, of a woman who, she's just on the train to New York, and she was talking to another woman about their family, their kids came up, and this other rider was saying, oh, our surrogate in Iran is pregnant with our triplets, and she's having a reductive surgery so that we only have twins. And it was like the most bizarre, just that to me encapsulated the evil of surrogacy. You are renting a woman's womb and growing a child in there. And what we know today, scientifically, I mean, just common sense, you don't need science to tell you that it's wrong to then rip that baby and give it to someone else. But from what we know in science today, what happens to a child growing in a woman's womb and to that woman's body bearing that child, for the rest of her life, she will carry the DNA of that child. She will carry the antibodies. She will carry all these cells from that child. That child is meant to be with her. And what surrogacy does is it intentionally crafts orphans and gives them to someone else. I am a huge proponent of adoption. When a child's biological parents cannot take care of him or her, adoption is obviously into a loving home with a mother and a father is obviously the right answer for that child. Give them a loving home. But adoption acknowledges the loss for the child. Surrogacy crafts the loss. It intentionally builds orphan children and gives them away. And to couples who cannot themselves have children biologically, when they say things like, oh, Italy is cracking down on gay couples, I'm like, no, reality is cracking down on gay couples. Biology.
Yeah, do I have to be the one to say why would same-sex, quote unquote, same-sex couples feel threatened here?
Right.
Because they can't have children. Obviously, the fruit of what they're doing does not produce children. Therefore,
exactly.
You somehow feel you have a right to do that?
You don't have a right to children.
Now even, and Tom, I want to get your thoughts on it too, but even before we get to that, doesn't it kind of seem like low-hanging fruit obvious to not allow people from your country go to, say, a third world country and just basically rent out a mule to carry your children? Like that to me, and pay them more money than they could probably make, that to me seems just morally wrong to do something like that. I mean, this just seems like a first step, let alone just banning surrogacy as a practice as a whole. But you definitely shouldn't be able to go take advantage of poor people to rent out their wombs.
Unfortunately, it's very illegal here in the United States. What shocked me most about the story was the origin of the story was Italy, because Italy is not really known for, if you're looking at people who get ahead or countries that get ahead on issues like bioethics, it's usually Germany. And the theory is that, well, Germany knows when you go the wrong path for bioethics where that leads. Except lately you've had England banning transgender surgery for minors. And now you have Italy banning surrogacy. And this is not an attack on homosexual couples or whatever. Just as the IVF and abortion commodify babies and children, this commodifies women. Nobody talks of it. And IVF surrogacy is a direct result from when you legalize IVF as well. The health risk to women, this could be their only chance to have a baby because of the procedures that are done. They affect the mental health, as this is a baby you're carrying in your womb and all of a sudden it's gone. Just the exploitation in general. You can go to California schools and the 18-year-old girls are bombarded with ads on their phones and the newspapers and all of basically rent out your womb, give us your eggs.
Wow.
It is such. I went on NPR, and this was a few years ago, and out of the blue, they're here like, "Oh, we're going to have you debate somebody, Eleanor Smeal, who was the head of at the time National Organization for Women."
Whoa.
And what can I say? But I'm not Kamala Harris. I can't say I'm doing my hair that night. So I agreed to the debate, and I had just a list in front of me. I didn't even talk about abortion or IVF, the things they wanted to talk about, or embryonic stem cell research. All I talked about was surrogacy. And by the end, the NPR host was with me and asking Eleanor Smeal, like, how could you support something like this? Aren't you supposed to stand up for women? Wow. This is the line of attack or the line of response that we as conservatives and as Catholics should have done. Now that IVF is now like the cause du jour, we should immediately came back and talked about two things. Fertility is the root of the problem, and surrogacy is the new problem that arises when you legalize IVF.
100%.
Yeah. I actually had a couple interesting things from the comments too. So someone actually from Milan commented saying that the article might leave you with the impression that Italy is an outlier. However, commercial surrogacy is illegal in the EU. Commercial surrogacy, that is surrogacy where the individual is paid to carry the baby or surrender it to other persons, is illegal in the European Union as Article 3 of Charter of Fundamental Rights, yada, yada, yada. In the fields of medicine and biology, the following must be respected in particular: the prohibition on making the human body and its parts as such a source of financial gain. Moreover, it's entirely banned in any form in France, Spain, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Finland, Norway, and Iceland. So definitely not an outlier. So it's interesting, ABC with this article, of course, trying to drum up some controversy here for Italy itself, as if this is somehow a crazy Giorgia Meloni, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
So then the other thing I wanted to add too is there was a nurse in the comments talking about her experience. Surrogacy sounds so nice and positive on the surface. I also used to think it was wonderful, and I became a labor and delivery nurse. I was once the nurse for a surrogate mother in labor whose life was at serious risk during the delivery. She was sobbing in extreme pain, bleeding out with nobody there to support her except the staff. The very wealthy and foreign surrogate parents sat on the couch the entire time just watching. For them, it was only a financial transaction as they watched this woman suffer and go through extreme trauma. When the baby was finally born, it got whisked away to another room with the, quote, parents that purchased the woman's services. She was left alone in the room, bleeding and sobbing. I will never, ever forget that woman. And I will never support surrogacy after I watched what happened. Being a labor nurse opened my eyes to the ugly side of surrogacy. It is usually lower income women who agree to do it. It is literally a form of legally purchasing children. There are so many things wrong with it if you actually see it happen. So food for thought.
Yep. That's a closing statement.
It is indeed good for Italy on that. And I think we should follow suit immediately if we aren't. Can we get a link to Tom's debate? Is that out there, Tom? Your debate on NPR?
I never looked at. You should look up my ones on C-SPAN because some of those are very, very interesting.
Ooh. Do you just look up Tinfoil Tom and it should come up? Is that your street name back in the day?
Street name.
That or words I cannot use because I testified before Congress once and against the Poker Players Alliance. It was on internet gambling. And here I was, the Catholic at the evangelical organization. We don't have that much of a problem with poker and stuff as Catholics. Mm-hmm. Don't touch our bingo.
X.
And except internet gambling is a completely different thing. And Poker's Players Alliance, they have it on their website, on their YouTube page, my testimony, because I just went in there going, I did not care. I was last minute add on because the person was supposed to testify. And if you search Tom McClusky and a certain dirty name, derogatory name, it pops up because that's what they labeled it on their YouTube site.
Tom, baby.
And I only learned this because my niece and nephew Googled me once. Hopefully not with that name, but it popped up. And I had to sit there and explain to like my 15 and 14-year-old niece and nephew what exactly they meant by that.
Dude,
What
too
does that
funny.
word mean, Uncle Tom?
You know what I think? I think this podcast needs more enemies. Not enough people have written slanderous things about us. And Tom, I think you might be leading the charge. Josh talks all the time about wanting this done to him. I don't think it's out there. We basically need to get our numbers up. When can we get in front of Congress and get derogatory names about us? Can you make it happen?
I think we need to start like slipping Josh's name into like some of the leftist podcasts and stuff like that, like as a commentator type of thing. Like start doing a grassroots thing of an anti-Josh campaign, so that he can feel more wanted.
How do we get Josh on a CNN panel like Ryan Gerdusky talking about the Ferguson effect? Could you imagine Josh in this? So first off, shout out Ryan. We're definitely going to have him on the show. The guy that was on CNN about Ferguson effect. He saw us talk about him. He said, I'd love to come on the show. So we're definitely setting that up, by the way. Catholic King. But yeah, I'd love to see Josh out in the mix a little bit more in the wild. But he'd have to leave Petoskey, which, he's not a huge fan of.
Mm-hmm.
The oracles are used to people coming to them.
That's true. Yeah. It's very Godfather when you think about it. Okay, so I actually had a couple questions.
A little FAQ Friday.
Some are quick and about, I believe, our ancestry. We have from Jennifer Pogo. My father is from a small farming town in Croatia. Where is your family from in Croatia? And my parents actually I talk about my parents a lot on the show. They actually just visited, said it was very cool. I believe they're also in Slovenia and got to hang out with Luka Doncic's dad, or no, they said he was in the same town, the hometown of Luka Doncic of basketball fame, which I thought was kind of cool. But to my knowledge, I think outside of Zagreb, and it goes obviously way, way back. So I've never been. I'd love to go one day. Shout out to all the Croatians in the chat, my people.
I saw a Lithuanian in the chat too. Hey.
Yes. So, okay. And then we have from Elizabeth Erica, I'm French, is it Abenaki? Do you know how to?
Abenaki, yeah.
Abenaki from Vermont. Can you tell me the name of the French Indian War book that you read?
I can. Okay, so my favorite one is actually called Mayflower. It's by Nathaniel Philbrick, who is my favorite New England historian. He's from Nantucket, but he wrote this great book about the arrival of the Pilgrims on the Mayflower and then how their kids totally messed everything up and led directly to the French Indian Wars. So check out Mayflower by Nathaniel Philbrick.
And
anything by Nathaniel Philbrick. If you
Tom,
like whaling books.
Are you a big French Indian guy? You big?
I grew up right out like 15 minutes away from the Canadian border, but I can't say I was. I have nothing against surrender monkeys. I just.
Tom, do you have any niche periods of history that you are interested in?
I think you asked me this before, because when I was in college, what I studied, because I majored in history and political science, was the Cold War. I even had a minor in Soviet studies. In the Soviet Union was this country that used to exist way back when. But nowadays, I'm more focused on early American history and Civil War too. Is just fascinating.
Yeah.
As we see the parallels.
Speaking of, I have a great section from the U of M DEI article in the New York Times, but that is for later.
Yeah.
A tease. Okay, so the other question, and I thought this, and I'm reading this because I want to hear if anyone else has had this experience because it is wild. Hey, all, love the show. Member of the Champions Club. Pray for you and the work you're doing. Thank you. First off, if you guys want to support us, the best way to do so, join the Champions Club. Hand down, link in the bio. Thank you to all the champions that listen. It's the only way we're able to do this. I have not heard anyone talk about this, but I would like to share an unexpected impact I've experienced due to the migrant crisis. I'm single and started online dating. I'm looking for a conservative man who shares my Catholic faith. The last 2 men I was talking to on Catholic Match were ardently pursuing me, and come to find out, they are not in this country 100% legally, which made some of their intense pursuit make sense. I do not want to fault them, but I am looking to find a husband who is able to freely build a life and family here. They were very nice, but They were very nice, and I don't think they were being intentionally nefarious, but this was an impact I didn't see coming. I don't want to be someone's strategy to stay in the United States. I'm not opposed to meeting someone who currently lives in another country, and then we can figure out the future together. But these scenarios had me wondering if I was being used and I felt like we could not build a solid foundation. I don't want American women being potentially used and marriage being used as a tool in this migrant crisis. Have you heard of anything like this happening elsewhere? Whoa. I'm not even in a border state. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of creeping me out a little bit.
Anyone in the chat?
Has anyone pursued your hand in marriage in order to stay in the country?
Otherwise, we do have the plot for a very creepy Hallmark movie here.
Yeah, that would be like the worst Hallmark movie. Yeah. That'd be like a horror Hallmark movie somehow. I've heard of examples of people chasing green cards for sure, both ends, men and women. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of effort when you could just walk across the southern border. Having a date and romance and all that feels a little complicated.
Who would have thought when they like founded CatholicMatch.com that one of the questions should be, are you in the United States 100% legally? Right. Like as a check off your box, or like on your profile of your ideal husband, you have to actually say out loud, he needs to be 100% legally in the United States. But maybe that's what we've come to.
Citizen of the United States.
Yeah, be careful, ladies.
I'm throwing that out there. If you've had an experience like this, email me. I'm very curious to hear. I personally have never heard. I've heard of people chasing green cards for sure, but not specifically on Catholic Match or whatever. But
maybe in February we can have a special Valentine's Day episode where
we matchmake on the podcast. That'd be kind of cool. I feel like our listeners, of course, very smart, very handsome, very beautiful.
LOOPCast.
Yeah, that's right.
LOOPCast.
I like that idea, Tom. That sounds like a train wreck waiting to happen in some ways.
Yeah,
but it'd be very entertaining.
That's okay.
Okay, so I'm going to slide to the Twilight Zone. Looks like I am up first. So first off, I'd like to address America's oldest enemy again. You guys hear me talk about them? Yes, I'm talking about the United Kingdom, aka England. So I have to show this. All right, everyone likes to cry about election interference when it comes to Russia or Iran. This is the first time I've seen our oldest enemy get in the mix, England, or the United Kingdom specifically. So report, hundreds of Labour Party staff are going to the U.S. to campaign in battleground states for Kamala Harris, and this is funded by the Labour Party in the U.K. And this is from Sophia Patel, head of operations. I have nearly 100 Labour Party staff, current and former, going to the U.S. in the next few weeks, heading to North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. I have 10 spots available for anyone to head to battleground state of North Carolina. We will sort your housing. Email me if you're interested. What are we talking about? England. This makes me want to just...
election interference.
Hop on and cross the Delaware and kick these fools out of the country. This is legitimate. First, we get Zelensky going to Pennsylvania. That's bad enough. Funded flying on Air Force Two. But we have English people now here? This is election interference. People talk all the time about Elon Musk, whatever. I'm actually more concerned about parties from different countries literally interfering in our elections. This is as cut and dry as it gets. We need to kick these people out of the country.
I mean, I have a hard time with a country that doesn't even speak the same language. So I can agree with you there. But I don't see how this isn't illegal, because even if they're volunteers, by paying for housing, this is a donation to the Kamala Harris campaign.
This is blatantly illegal.
Right.
Yeah.
And
but 1812 2.0. I love that. Who's that in the chat? 1812. They're back.
We dumped tea in the harbor over like a 2-cent tax.
Right.
And basically started a war. And now we have actual British people coming and interfering in our presidential election with everything at stake.
Come on, guys.
I'm telling you, we need another revolution.
You need a group of is it Talking Points America, a group of young kids to follow all these volunteers around with cups of tea, and anytime they knock on a door, just pour it out.
Facts. And I think we need a new Paul Revere 2.0, to go around riding on a horse saying the British are coming.
Tesla. No.
Yeah, in a Cybertruck.
The Cybertruck, Paul Revere, tri-cornered hat.
Dude, what do we even talk? That's so. I don't even know. We just need to. How do we even sue these people? What, you think the Department of Justice is going to get on this after they're done throwing all the pro-lifers in jail?
Yeah, no, the Department of Justice is too busy in Virginia making sure the dead people get back on the voter rolls after Governor Youngkin kicked them out. Because,
Telling you, our oldest enemy at it again. Their
Priorities,
tricks.
man.
So my next one is Scott Jennings is, again, maybe the only reason I watch CNN these days. He is on an absolute heater. I don't know why they keep inviting him on. Maybe it's because he brings good ratings, but he continues to obliterate panels, and this is the latest.
State, which he can now do because of the Supreme Court. And he's going to take on these countries that screw American workers. That's the plan. And by the way, he's going to crack down on immigration to the benefit of American workers.
He's going to deport 20 million people, the people who pick your crops, the people who process your meat, the people who, care for your grandmother, the people who serve all sorts of critical functions in this country.
I mean, look at him here. He's just, we got her.
Like,
First off,
lady.
Who brought the Anne from The Office to come talk on this panel? Beyond me. Now, this is the latest version of my favorite of all time clip of this, which is The View.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's not.
In the sense that, you know what I mean? Like, when I'm saying that
There's more jobs to be
they always,
but
they don't.
are not.
It's just every time.
Oh my gosh.
What's
Who's
better than
gonna
this
pick my
screenshot?
cotton? Who's going to scrub my toilets? Oh my goodness.
I've just been using this platform to say this over and over again. So before there were millions of people here illegally in the country, someone took care of farming. I think if I had to guess, it was the Americans. I don't understand. Every argument in favor of illegal immigration eventually descends into who's going to pick your cotton. And it's the same argument that people use for not freeing slaves or not allowing black people to be free in the country. Who's going to pick your cotton? Who's going to do the menial labor? It always slips out. You can see every time someone eventually gets there, accidentally, because it's not very popular to say, they always pause and they get awkward, and they should be awkward. You're looking at people here illegally that are being taken advantage of, that business people are taking advantage of, as beneath you, as less than, as having to do menial labor, such as picking crops. I haven't even heard that phrase used in a long time. I mean, not too far from picking cotton. And it's insane to me that we continue to allow this as like a legitimate, reasonable. The CNN, the woke people that didn't understand the Ferguson effect are like, oh yeah, great point. Who's gonna pick the crops?
Yeah.
The Democrats went from supporting slavery to supporting serfdom.
Yeah, and I hate it. And every time I see it, I just need an excuse to play that View clip with the purple hair lady. It's the best.
Kelly Osbourne.
Yeah,
I think that's who it was. Ozzy Osbourne's daughter.
To be fair, she has never scrubbed a toilet in her life, I'm guessing.
That's true. That's true. I didn't even know that's who that was. Tom, thank you for that. My final is the DEI. Sorry, I'm going heavy Twilight today.
I know. What is up with this?
Is he doing them for all of us? Or?
No. I'm going heavy. Hey, don't worry. We got time. I'm going heavy Twilight today. There's a lot of things that happen. So my first one was we get this article from the New York Times about the University of Michigan, not too far from where I grew up. The University of Michigan doubled down on DEI and what went wrong. A decade and $250 million later, students and faculty are more frustrated than ever. And fascinating article, very long. I think I looked at the audio to play the audio of it. It was an hour long. I recommend just taking the time on a Saturday or Sunday to sit down and read it. It's probably the best synopsis of a specific DEI program over a period of about a decade. They started in like 2015, 2016, where they took on this major investment to make Michigan kind of the hub of DEI for academia across the country. They were blazing a new path. And of course, a lot of this came after many Supreme Court decisions made it illegal for affirmative action to specifically choose people's race to get into college. But there was also a few Supreme Court decisions before that made these kind of DEI initiatives tough. And Michigan just decided, we're going to get creative. We're going to get around that. I believe they talk about fostering a inclusive environment that would encourage people of all races to attend without explicitly choosing them. of course, that led to most of the people within the DEI infrastructure to be African American somehow. I'm not sure. I think it was 80% was the number at Michigan. And there was this is the story from it that I think was the best. One was about a Native American guy who is the English professor at the school. He read a passage from, it was a book about how white people, poor white people and rich white people would use racist slurs as a way to unify, and they would distract the poverty of the white people to keep them agitated against black people. So it's funny, it wasn't even really like a super derogatory thing. And a student, of course, felt unsafe, got up, walked out, and filed the Title IX against the professor. And the professor is just basically saying, like, what frustrates me, and especially Native American, he's like, first off, land acknowledgements are empty virtue signaling. But we've just completely thrown out decades of literature from the South. Can't even be taught, can't even be discussed, because we've created, like, so the quote that I want to get to here, which is a great summary of DEI and summarizes the entire article. So this entrepreneurship professor, Eric Fretz at University of Michigan, apparently has a very popular program. And he said, in a good faith effort to be more inclusive, he actually put out a disclaimer. This is in 2021, before the semester of his entrepreneurship class, to be more inclusive. And here's a quote from it. "What I apologize for in advance, soft sexism, born in the 1960s, the end of an era for all moms being at home, all textbooks showing only male scientists, etc. While he would try to do a good job being balanced with my examples and being sensitive to social justice issues," Fretz wrote, "students should call me on it if he failed." Immediately, a female student in the class said this statement, quote, "raised red flags." She dropped the class, saying the statement was extremely disrespectful and ignorant of the struggles of women and girls continue to face on a daily basis. His behavior, quote, "inseparably ingrained within a larger culture of harm that exists on this campus and within the wider world." She promptly filed a Title IX complaint against him, and he received no punishment, but Fretz has changed his tune on DEI pretty quickly. Quote, "It's this gotcha culture they have created on campus," he told me, adding, "It's like giving a bunch of 6-year-olds tasers."
That's called changing your tune. He went from an apologetic, like laying himself on the doormat, "please walk over me," to tasers to 6-year-olds. Yeah, that's about right. Never apologize to these people, because they will just eat you alive and go to the next thing and the next and the next. And they're not interested in reconciliation. They want to destroy what we have come to know as the liberal arts, really.
But even the pre-apology wasn't enough. That was my favorite part about this. It wasn't even like he went through the class, got a Title IX. It was he pre-apologized, and for the pre-apology, he got Title IX and 6-year-old with tasers. And your husband, Erica, was in academia for a little while. I'd imagine in the sense I got from this article, especially at a place like U of M, which is supposedly this bastion of higher learning and education, is that most of the faculty are actually very frustrated by this, because the exact sentiment of giving 6-year-olds tasers, it's like letting the animals run the zoo. And then also the inability to actually engage in challenging ideas under the guise of kind of these modern labels, and just the threat of being Title IX all the time for just teaching class.
Yeah, 100%. It's a very strange thing, the Academy, the Ivory Tower. And I actually, I just recorded yesterday an interview with a woman named Heather Hying. She and her husband, Brett Weinstein, were at the Evergreen College in Colorado. And as a result of this same DEI wave that was coming through that the Michigan article is about here in the 2014-15 range, they eventually were pressured into resigning at the hands of a very violent mob. So I'm encouraging everyone to keep an eye out for that interview. It should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And she talks about this at length as being inside. And she herself is not a woman of faith. She's an evolutionary biologist. Just what that was like to experience the rage of the DEI mob and to not fold. So yeah, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It really touched our family personally, and her as well. So yeah, to keep an eye out for Heather Hying. She should be dropping the next couple of weeks.
Wow. Okay. Erica?
Oh, that's me. So I'm also going across the pond. I'm going with that not only is the UK trying to interfere in our lives, but also in the lives of its own citizens. This week we had an arrest the United Kingdom police, they charged a man with a crime. We see him here on the camera, a little footage, or not him. We see the police officers here. He was filming. He was charged with the crime of silently praying. He was standing quietly on a public green across the street from an abortion facility. He was 50 to 75 meters away is what the footage shows. He was by a tree out of line of sight, and he was praying. The police come over and they're like, oh, hello, we just want to come over and say hello, but also to inquire as your two activities today. And he said, well, I'm praying. And they're like, what is the nature of your prayer? And he says, I'm praying for my son who is deceased. He's praying for his dead son. I don't know the whole story. We don't have the details on that yet. Maybe his son died in that facility.
Can I stop you briefly? I mean, this image right here of the cop and then the subtitles, quote, what is the nature of your prayer?
Right.
That just sends chills down my spine. Who even?
Yeah.
What a question.
Yeah. So this actually happened 2 years ago. And the reason it popped up again this week is that he just finished his final day of his trial. So he was charged 2 years ago. His trial just ended, and we're waiting for the verdict to come down. If he's found guilty, he will have a criminal record. He faces multiple fines, not necessarily prison sentence, but definitely very, very hefty fines. Wow. Speaking of which, though, this is so important to the local authorities there that people not be silently praying anywhere near an abortion facility, that the local district has spent over 90,000 pounds of taxpayer money to prosecute this man. That talk about priorities. I mean, it is truly dystopian level stuff going on there in the UK. And, you know, based on your Twilight Zone, Tom, it's coming soon to a city near you. So
yeah. Well, yeah, it's not just in the UK, because just this week we had a woman sentenced for her protesting here in the United States. Mother. Her father is just like, you're orphaning my children, or you're taking their mother away.
Right.
I mean, the Al Smith dinner, it's supposed to be a funny event and everything else. But one thing that I think Donald Trump should have came hard on was, I'm not going to put you in jail.
Yeah.
She's built her career from David Daleiden to Mark Houck to the woman who was sentenced this week of putting Catholics in jail. And that there isn't more outrage about this, that this is happening in the United States. The people who say it could never happen here. But onto my Twilight Zone, going to go in a different direction than what I sent you, Tom. I have two options. I don't want to be Tom and like hog all the time. So I can either go after my whipping post, the USCCB, or give a little bit of pro-life history. Which one? Which one should I do?
Whip them. Go for it.
We haven't talked about the bishops in a while.
Okay. The U.S. Conference of Catholic. Well, first, a little background. If you're familiar with what a lame duck session of Congress is.
Wait, Tom. I think your wife's behind you, cutting you off right now.
Yeah.
I made sure she's out of the house right now.
Okay, Al Smith cutting you off. Okay, go
ahead. Now, a lame duck Congress is when you have a bunch of members of Congress who got voted out of office, yet they're still in power. So it's that time between Election Day in November till when a new Congress gets sworn in January 3rd. Bad things happen for conservatives at those times. Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened during this time. There was large tax cuts have happened at this time. Just many, many bad things. I believe
the Workers' Fairness Act. Yeah.
Well, the Pregnant Workers' Fairness Act, the white whale of Erica's and mine, because it was kind of only us and the Ethics and Public Policy Center who were kind of raising the red flags about this bill, saying this bill is going to prosecute people. The way I knew it was going to be in the lame duck was because the USCCB started sending out alerts saying this needs to be in any end of year spending bill that we have. And so we fought it. We lost, and lo and behold, what happened? The bill is being used to go after pro-lifers and pro-life businesses. So flash forward to earlier this week, and an email from the USCCB, and I get many of them. None of them have talked about legislation, other than they have been very vocal against any IVF legislation, promoting IVF.
That's good.
But the alert this week was about the Stateless Protection Act of 2024, which by sending the email out now, you can only assume the USCCB wants this to be in any end of the year spending package. This is a bill that's only sponsored by a bunch of very liberal Democrats in both the House and the Senate. It would eradicate most immigration laws that are currently there. Most of the things that Donald Trump would like to do if he comes back into office, the things he did before by executive order, this would stop many of them. It would allow, if Kamala Harris were president, it would allow her to give waivers to sex traffickers, criminals, drug traffickers coming across the border. It is a bill that can only make things worse. And this seems to be the top priority for the USCCB 2 weeks before the election and right before a lame duck. So that's one of many bills that Catholic Vote will be watching out for to make sure no lame duck. There shouldn't be a lame duck at all, but there certainly shouldn't be big spending bills, which the other side, both Republicans and Democrats take advantage of and try to Christmas tree and add all this garbage to it.
Can you repeat the name of that bill again?
It's the Stateless Protection Act of 2024. The Stateless Protection Act. And when they're saying stateless, they're not saying New York isn't a state. They're saying countries.
Right.
Like countries' borders should be more or less seen as stateless.
Who do you know who wrote the bill?
I want to say Raskin. I have my notes in front of me, but I don't. But I can certainly get that for our notes or whatever.
Yeah, we're going to cover that.
Yeah, and then Tom, I also wanted to ask you, on the lobbyist front, we talked a little bit before the episode. In that Bret Bair interview, what immediately made me angry again was that James Langford came forward with that terrible immigration bill, the one that Kamala Harris keeps referencing in order to dodge the question about Laken Riley being dead, the girl from Houston being dead, all at the hands of illegal immigrants. It was a bill that essentially promised mass amnesty to everyone. It was about $1 million a year, I think. And now, of course, it got shut down. Kamala saying Trump killed it. Why? I don't understand. This just seems like the biggest strategic misstep to have a Republican, James Langford, come forward with a mass amnesty bill to just hand that as a gift to Kamala Harris. Why did that ever become a thing?
It seems to happen every couple of years because the Republicans like to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Marco Rubio had a really bad bill a few years ago. John Cornyn a few years before that. Mitch McConnell, from what I understand, went to James Langford and said, we need to do something about the border, figure out a bill, work with the Democrats on it. And there's a lot of gaslighting about this bill, including some by James Langford, because you're exactly right. This bill would have just made things worse. And the biggest lie is that Donald Trump killed the bill. Donald Trump came late to the game. I wish Donald Trump killed the bill like right out front. He did eventually oppose it. It was Republicans who in the House, including, because Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and I'm not usually a huge fan of his because I wish he took more bolder stances that aligned with his values, but he did take a stance on this one, that this one is DOA. Mm-hmm. And he said this long before Donald Trump had any comments about it. Except the fact that James Langford now is like doubling down on it. I really cannot explain it other than just as there's, I think the Vatican has a hold that Catholic priests cannot run for public office. Maybe that should be true for Christian ministers as well, because we do not do immigration well. No. As organizations, be they Baptists, Catholics, whatever, we do not do immigration well. We just concentrate on the first part of welcome the stranger and don't concentrate on the second part of honoring your mother and father and protect and loving thy neighbor. Care for your
children.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The other thing I want to ask too, so you know Speaker Johnson personally. You saw the CBS stuff, right, of him recording himself during the interview?
And if I can... because all this goes originally back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the first one, I think, who really effectively pushed back against the media. And then J.D. Vance finessed it. Not that a vice president, and I think, and nobody could eclipse Donald Trump. So, in nobody except J.D. Vance. It's an art form watching him go against the media.
Yes, it is.
Because of that, I think that Mike Johnson, and I hope it inspires others, don't just take it at face value. And it was Mike Johnson, from what I heard from his staff, who told his staff, start taping my interviews, because he knew they would start cutting it up. And a lot of this goes back to when J.D. Vance was named, and I, as like a lot of people at Catholic Vote, huge fan of J.D. Vance. I consider him a friend. He probably considers me some stranger he's met like 5 or 6 times. But in 1988, when Dan Quayle was named the vice president, the Democrats attacked him as being an idiot, of being stupid, not ready for prime time. And the Republican answer was to hide Dan Quayle in a closet. And Dan Quayle was a pretty smart guy. Unfortunately, I think because of that initial, Dan Quayle almost grew into a stereotype. And I was afraid they were going to do that with JD, because JD's numbers weren't good, because the other side was attacking him, usually with lies and stuff like that. But instead, the Trump campaign said, JD is brilliant. He knows how to fight back. Let's let him loose. And because of that, I mean, J.D. Vance really is rewriting the story, I think, for hopefully other members of Congress beyond Mike Johnson, of the media is not your friend, and call them out.
He gets it. He's a pleasure to watch. It's just...
Oh, it's so refreshing.
It's a masterclass.
I think for me, and we've had people request to get him on the Loopcast. I'm working on it. Tom, I might need to be a part of that. I would love for him to take time out of his busy schedule.
I'll tell you right now, even his, I was in a, I'm hoping I can say this, but I was in a fantasy football league with 2 of his top staffers.
Come on, Tom.
His top staffers dropped out of the league when he was named vice president. Because they're keeping a very low profile, which is wise. I would recommend it to any campaign, and especially to staff, keeping a very low profile, because sometimes in our chats we get a little.
Did they have like embarrassing team names that they needed to?
Possibly. That's very possibly true. But I have reached out, and everything is like, let's talk in November.
Right. Which, hey, if they win, I'm happy to have them on. Even if they lose, I'd be happy to have them on, to be honest.
I know we're running over, but when Donald Trump and his first vice president candidate, it was this guy, Mike Pence, when they were running, because I knew Mike Pence when he was a member of Congress, so I actually had his cell phone number. And when he got named the nominee, and I talked with Jeannie Mancini, the woman who runs the March for Life, and we invited Mike Pence, win or lose, because both of us thought he was going to lose, you need to come and speak at the March for Life. And then I texted him again after after Labor Day and after the Republican convention. He's like, looking forward to it. And then after he won, I texted him, got a quick text back, like, would have to look at it. And then they got rid of the phone number.
Oh man.
So then we send the letter to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump couldn't make it, and he was that year. And as Mike Pence tells the story, like he was in the room with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's here like, I really wish I could go. Could I send somebody else? And Mike Pence is like, well, they invited me too. So the truth is, we invited Mike Pence first. But it was a matter of you concentrate on winning, and then you concentrate on the stuff afterwards.
Right.
Yeah. No, win or lose. Open invite to JD Vance. Anyone on his staff, cross your fingers, listen to this. Open invite, love. We'll work on it. We'll work on it for the people. JD Vance is delightful. I think personally, and I know again we're running over, but I think it was he's so funny on Twitter. He's Catholic too. John Doyle was saying, remember when everyone thought that Kamala was going to win and Trump was going to lose because they had a bunch of gay men in the Brat Summer thing. Like they had a little sugar high and everyone's like, it's over. They got the gays. She's Brat. It's over. JD Vance did something with a couch. And we're like, it's going to be over. We're all panicking. And of course, I mean, you look at it, the momentum's not with the Harris campaign right now. But I think that he beat the early, try to like smother him with a pillow. And as soon as he got in the debate stage, he's way too far gone. Like, he's already kind of cemented himself at a national status in the kind of catty couch jokes or awkward, weird jokes, they don't work anymore because it's almost like, and in some ways it almost is better because he's proved that they were lying about that all the accusations of being weird and out of touch and whatever, he's done so much media now, and that performance are like, okay, not only is he not weird, he's really normal, but we were lied to by the other side about him, which also kind of makes you second guess. So to completely agree on JD. Sorry, we're way over. I know that. We've been going a little bit long. We've been having fun with these. Tom, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
Keep doing great work writing Josh's material, his jokes. Anytime he sounds smart, keep it up because it'd be really tough if you dropped out. And could you also? We're going to do a documentary of Josh going to Japan, and I've had a few people send in suggested titles of his trip to Japan. And so if you want to be on that trip, that would be great.
I'll be in the corner when we have him sumo wrestle.
Pretty pumped.
For that visual image.
All right, we send you guys into the weekend. Hey, if you want to do one thing to help us out right before you leave a like on this episode, subscribe on YouTube. You can leave reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Helps us out a ton. Pray for us, of course, the biggest thing. You can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org, but pray for us. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. Have a great